For any kind of agile transformation to happen, in my experience, I have found that it is effective if there is top-down, politically acceptable sponsorship spine that exists around the idea for change, which means there needs to be a C-level sponsorship spine. So there needs to be clear traceability between the need for this change and how it ties to your business objective. Which means if you're going agile, why are you going agile? Are you trying to run faster? You're trying to build a sustainable pace? You're trying to improve quality? Is it a combination of all these three things? What are you trying to go after? There has to be a clear traceability between those optimization goals from a business standpoint and the need for a specific cadence you're trying to establish, whether that cadence is a Scrum cadence, which is sprints, or Kanban, which is cycles, or discipline agile delivery, which is iterations. There's got to be some sort of a consistent way of how it ties back to your overall business goal. If that is there, then second, I'd say bottom up from an execution standpoint, the movement needs to be socially desirable. What that means is people need to volunteer their time. Right now, if people don't volunteer their time, then they will do the bare minimum. And the job of a Scrum Master, for example, you will notice in a lot of companies gets boiled down to, or rather gets trivialized to administration work. Like all they're doing is getting donuts for the team or doing party planning and stuff like that, right? There is a reason why the Scrum Master is not just the admin on the team. The Scrum Master is supposed to be an organizational change agent, which means their responsibility is not just to the Scrum team, but also to the larger organization. And so if you're familiar with concepts like the Kanban Model, for example, which allows you to create a litmus test, it stands here. I just mentioned this, sorry, I used the buzzword. It's called the Kanban Model. This is a problem domain analysis model that allows you to make sense of what kind of problem you're dealing with. So think about it like this. At the end of the day, every project is a scope, cost, and time problem, right? So it's variable scope, fixed time, variable time, fixed scope, whatever that permutation and combination is. Mathematically, it's probably like 3 factorial, right? Variable this, fix that, variable that, fix this. So it's a scope, cost, and time problem. And so your job now as a Scrum Master is to work with the product owner and to make sense of which of those 3 things is a constant, which of them is a variable, and then design the organization or design the team structure by working with team management to make sense of, do we need cross-functional skills here, or do we need specialization of skills here, or do we need complete transferability of skill here, which means everybody can do everybody else's job. And like in Kanban, you will have a lot of transferability of skill. In Scrum, you have cross-functionalization of skill. The way you incentivize behavior in an employee for both those things is going to be significantly varied. So the movement needs to be socially desirable. That means middle management needs to create a lot of communities of practices, and there needs to be an incentive for people to volunteer for helping with transformation, creating agile maturity models, looking at Kanban models, and building out an agile suitability matrix. Like one of the jobs of a Scrum Master would be to work with the product owner or work with the executives and say, every time somebody has a new business case of an idea and says, hey, I want to use Scrum for this stuff. How do you prove with data that this business case is going to be a good fit for Scrum? Or how do you prove it's going to be a good fit for Kanban? Which means there's some sort of a litmus test in your company that you can run the business case through. When it comes out of that litmus test, you can prove that, hey, boss, because of these 15 things, we can prove that this is a specific kind of problem. And here are the kind of options available to solve for it, whether it's Scrum, extreme programming, or Kanban, right? There's got to be some sort of an agile suitability matrix. And there are plenty of resources out there that you can look out on the internet that can help you create these agile suitability matrices. Same thing with the agile maturity model, like from a people perspective, process perspective, technology perspective, infrastructure perspective, funding perspective, audit perspective. How are you measuring quantitatively the improvement in the maturity of the organization? So let's say you spend $1 million on agile transformation. 6 months from now, if your EVP comes to you and says, hey, prove to me that we are better off with these 50 teams than we were 6 months ago. How do you prove that? There's got to be some sort of an agile maturity model. To get a good start on your agile maturity models, here is a website I would recommend you look at. This website is a collection of like 25 or 30 different models. And you know what they say about models, right? Most models are wrong, but some are useful. So take that for what it's worth. All right. So don't jump into a relationship blindly with a model without thinking through. But if you look at this website, I often go to this website, agilityhealthradar.com. They have a bunch of different radars available. You can pull from these radars. You can custom design your own agile maturity model to check whether you're getting mature as a team or as an organization, from a process perspective, from a people perspective. It's important to have that heat map that you can run on a monthly basis to check the maturity of the teams. And that heat map or that agile maturity model should be across team delivery, or team performance rather, and team health. So team delivery and team performance is going to be objective data, like the predictability of delivery. So you're essentially your say-do ratio, right? Or your commitment versus completion ratio. If you said you would do 10 things, did you finish 10 things? Or are you doing 15 things or 5 things? Can I trust you as a team? And then it's also about the stability or the quality parameters. So your deployment frequency, your mean time to respond, your lead change time, all these development operation metrics. Also think about cycle time versus lead time. All these different metrics are the objective measures that need to be factored into your agile maturity model from a performance standpoint. On the other side, from a health standpoint or a team health standpoint, this is the soft data. This is going to help you understand whether the team is working at a sustainable pace, whether people are happy on the team, or are people just coming to do their job because they have to, right? Do they actually enjoy? If you want to retain rock star talent in your company, people need to be excited about the kind of work that they're doing, right? How is the burnout? How's the attrition level on the team? Are you constantly having people float back and forth? Is there a constant churn of skills and talent in the team? So it needs to be a combination of both hard objective data and soft subjective data. And there are plenty of models out there. Agility Health Data is one of them. You can take a look at that. It's got some information around that. And so a lot of these things would be factors that would contribute to helping gauge the maturity of your organization. So coming back to your question, Sumati, I sort of give you a long-winded answer, but the short of it is that there needs to be top-down executive support. Otherwise, everything you're trying to do, you will not be able to, create a socially desirable movement. Because if there is no top-down support, then a best case scenario, it becomes a compliance initiative. Worst case scenario, it just becomes another thing people get to ignore. And so that's not the right way to go about doing it, or not a sustainable way in my view. If you're looking for like a model, a visual representation of a model that can help you figure out how do I build a coalition of people, like change champions in my company? How do I figure out what's low hanging fruit, what I can tackle now versus later? Check out this. Check out the change model I just put in the chat window. It's called Cotter Change Model, developed by John Cotter. It's an 8-step model that, and John Cotter, for those of you who are not familiar, by the way, he's a professor emeritus at Harvard Business School. He's pretty much considered as one of the gods of management by a lot of established CEOs out there. So he developed this 8-step change model, which is very, very specific and detailed, that shows you how to create a shared vision for a change. How do you build psychological ownership for that change, not just within your executive, but also with the troops on the ground? How do you build a coalition of people? How do you figure out the low hanging fruit, like I was saying earlier? What's the longer term goal? How do you avoid complacency in the system? And it has a step-by-step procedure of how you can, really help fructify the idea for that change in the system. So another resource to look at. Okay.